Hello, welcome to Miss Peepers Reading Corner. I'm Katrina, aka Miss Peepers. Let's talk about books. If you watched my March wrap-up, which I posted last week, you will have heard me say quite clearly, I don't have a whole lot of reading plans for April. And at the time of filming, that was true. That was 2 days ago. And earlier today, I learned that there is a readathon that is based on Dungeons and Dragons, and it's in April. As a D&D nerd, I met my husband playing D&D. We still play D&D. Love all that stuff, fantasy, swords and sorcery and all the things. I couldn't not do it, right? That's my story. I'm sticking to it. You believe me, right, Mrs. Pickles? Yeah, she believes me. Anyway, Pickles, say hi to the people. Yeah, Mrs. Pickles. It's the last day of March at the time I'm filming this, though you won't actually see this video for a couple of weeks. I thought I would go through what I'm planning to do for this readathon. I'll link to the readathon details below, but the readathon is called Tomes and Treasures, and it's being co-hosted by The Creepy Geek and Ashley's Bookish Life. So please check those creators out as well. But I'm not going to pretend, I've got my computer here because I'm not going to pretend that I have memorized all of these prompts. I most definitely have not. So we're going to read from this, and I've got the books here that I'll be reading. Now, the premise of the readathon, it's inspired by D&D. Phase 1 is creating a character. When you sit down to play any kind of tabletop game, the first thing you need is a character and a character sheet. So I've created mine, and I've picked the books that I'm gonna use for it. And so I'll go through what my selections were. I'm not going to go into extreme detail on all of the options because that's a whole video and I don't want to steal the creators' thunder, so please check them out and check out the resources that they've linked in their videos. But we'll just go through here. So first, I have to choose a race. So I decided to be an elf. And the prompt that is associated with being an elf is read a book with a beautiful cover. Now, one thing that I've decided to do, there are other things that I have committed to reading. You'll recognize this one if you watched my my last video. It is the April mystery book that I picked up. But I do think this is a lovely cover. It's shiny, so try not to do that. So it's shiny, it's got this a really nice green, it's got like little wine glasses at the bottom here, a plant, look at that. Is that an orchid? I'm really bad at plants. Anyway, this is Second Chance by Jane Green. And this book follows a group of friends who went to school together but haven't seen each other for years. And for some reason they come back together again, which I'll find out when I read the book. I think it's a slice of life sort of novel. Second, I had to choose my class, which is basically, if you don't play D&D, that's basically your job, the thing you're trained to do. I often play a paladin when I play D&D. It's a fun class. Paladins fight in the name of their deity, and they follow a very strict moral code. The prompt related to that is a book with a promise, whether it's a promise with the character's self, another character, a higher being, any kind of promise. I'm actually using this prompt to finish a book that I'm about halfway through, which is The Murder Room by P.D. James. And I think this fits for a couple of reasons. One, it's a murder mystery, and the detectives have taken up an oath to pursue wrongdoers and find justice for the people who have been murdered. It's also a book that I promised to read in March, and I'm not done, so we're gonna go fulfill that promise. So I think this one fits within the prompt, also without spoiling too much, because of course I don't want to tell you what happens. It's a mystery, but the premise here is that there are three trustees who are also siblings who are running this museum together, and one of the rooms in the museum has displays about historical murders and murderers, which is pretty interesting. But the lease is almost up for the museum, the building the museum is in, and one of the siblings has vowed not to sign the new lease, thereby requiring the museum to be shut down. The other two siblings are against them, and bodies start to drop. All right, the next part of the character creation is your character's background. So this is maybe how they grew up or something that they learned before they started adventuring. And in this case, I chose entertainer. This is a person who lives to entertain others, maybe a singer, a dancer, a comedian, something along those lines. The book prompt comes down to like entertainment. And so I am going to use this to finish another book that I've started, which is Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. This book follows two teenage boys who live in a small town that has been visited by a traveling carnival. And bad stuff starts to happen. Creepy, weird stuff starts to happen. The next prompt is upbringing environment. I chose village, and the idea for whatever environment you choose is to read a book that is set in that environment. And I'm going to be reading Jude the Obscure by Thomas Hardy. I know this is set in a village. This is a classic, and it's one that I clearly set aside to read, which is why I put my tabs in here. All right, and then we select a deity. Because I'm playing a paladin who is a divine warrior, or a warrior on behalf of the divine, if you will. I chose the god of war. You can, if you decide to do this readathon, you can also choose no deity, and there's a prompt for that as well, but there are several to choose from. And the prompt there is that there is a weapon on the cover. So I'm going to read Redwall by Brian Jacques, and you can see this mouse has a little sword, so weapon on the cover. And this is a fantasy series. It's a middle grade, I believe. It is the summer of the late rose, and the gentle mice of Mossflower Wood are gathered at the ancient stone abbey of Redwall, celebrating a year of peace and abundance. But a sinister shadow has fallen across the abbey, for it is rumored that Clooney is coming. Clooney, the terrible one-eyed rat, and his battle-seasoned horde. Clooney, whose vow is to conquer Redwall. Something that is becoming, I think, a little bit less and less focus in D&D as each edition is released, but still exists to some degree, is your moral alignment. There are a number of different options, but I went with lawful neutral. That is the closest to my own personal alignment, just as me, Katrina, Miss Peepers. And lawful neutral essentially means that you are a rule follower, that you follow the laws, but you also, if you think that something is wrong within the legal system, you work within it to correct it. This prompt has to do with the colors that are on the cover of your book. This one is blue and white on the cover. And so I chose Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. And honestly, I could have chosen this for Most Beautiful cover as well. Because this is a gorgeous, gorgeous cover. So this is a time travel story, and it is about a Black woman who finds herself moving back and forth in time between the modern day, which in this case is the 70s, because that's when I believe that's when this book was published. Oh my gosh, it's so pretty. The end papers are so pretty. Look at that. Look at that. And the hardback cover. Oh my gosh. This is such a nice edition. I really like this. I really like it. This book, published in 1979, follows a Black woman. She finds herself traveling back and forth in time between the 1970s, which is where when she lives, when she is from, and the 1800s antebellum South. And it's a fascinating story. I haven't read the book, but I have seen the adaptation, which is what brought the book to my attention, to be perfectly honest. I was very upset that the adaptation was canceled on a cliffhanger. I hate that. I hate when that happens. Octavia Butler is a gorgeous writer. I really want to read basically everything she's written at some point, but we'll be reading Kindred this month. Now we get into equipment for our D&D character. Now paladins tend to wear plate mail. They tend to be kind of that picture of a medieval knight in a lot of ways. And so I chose heavy armor because that gives you the best protection against being hit. The prompt is a heavy read, either physically heavy or deals with a heavy topic. And we're going with physically heavy. I've been meaning to read Middlemarch for a month now, since the beginning of March. I am going to read this book, dagnabbit, we're gonna do it. And this is the prompt that is going to get me there. Middle March. What good is wading into battle if you don't have a weapon? So I get 2 weapons as a martial class, as a paladin. And the first one, I'm choosing a slashing weapon, specifically a greatsword, so typically two-handed. And that prompt is a book that slices through the others, a book that would get you out of a reading slump or a refreshing book. So when I think about getting out of a reading slump, and check out my short on the topic, think of reading something that is light, that is easy. I may be the last person on BookTube to read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, but I'm getting there, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it in April. Oh, I guess I should tell you what this is about. I assume that because I'm the last person on BookTube to read this, that you've heard of it before, but just in case, this is a fantasy novel about an orc woman who decides to start a coffee shop. And this is often pointed to as like the epitome of cozy fantasy. It is high fantasy, no stakes. It says it on the back. A novel of high fantasy and low stakes. So I'm looking forward to finally seeing what the hype is about. It's always smart when you have a D&D character to have a way to fight up close, but also a way to fight at range. So that was my great sword right up in your face. And then I also took a piercing weapon, a longbow, in case the enemy is too far for me to get to them. The piercing weapons, the prompt here is that it pierces your heart, a book that you think will make you cry. And I don't just think this is going to make me cry. I know it is. And that is Heartstopper Volume 5. I read the first 4 last year. I know this has been out for a few months and I still haven't read it yet, partly because I need to find a time when I can just sit with a box of tissues and just be kind of a mess for a bit. This is a delightful teen romance about Nick and Charlie. It's super wholesome. They're so cute together, but they also deal with a lot of trauma and trials. Just being a teenager is hard enough. Being a teenager who is perceived as different or who is othered in some way is that much worse. Alice Oseman is the artist as well as the writer of this. It is a graphic novel. I don't know if I mentioned that. Graphic novel. And it's just so good. It's just so good. And then the last prompt is a skill test. And so what that means in D&D terms basically is if you're trying to do something, you use one of your skills and you roll a 20-sided die and add some stuff to it based on what's in your character sheet and find out whether you were successful at doing that thing or not. They didn't give us an opportunity to add anything to our D20 roll, but let's cut to that because I rolled it earlier. All right, y'all, we're gonna roll our skill check. So these are the 20 books that I've chosen. I just kind of dropped them in no particular order, although I did rearrange them a little bit so they'll stay upright. But we're gonna count them as book 1 is David Sedaris' Let's Explore Diabetes with Owls, all the way to number 20, In the Unlikely Event by Judy Blume. But we're gonna open our Mimic dice box, take ourselves a 20-sided die. Hope we don't knock everything over. And hopefully we can see that. Let's roll. Okay, we got 11 on the die. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. We are reading Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, which I hope I pronounced correctly. So the die has spoken. Let's get back to the rest of the video. And we're back. So as you saw, and of course I've taken the cover off of this, but because that's what I do. I know I'm a monster. But I will be reading Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I really hope I'm pronouncing the name properly before I actually talk about this, having read it. Once I read it, before I talk about it, I'll double check that. Okay, I don't know a ton about this book, but it is set in pre-colonial Nigeria, and it follows the beginnings of European missionaries and colonial forces coming to Africa. I suspect this is going to be a tough read, but but should be a pretty interesting one as well. Okay, what have I done to myself? This is 11 books. I'm probably not going to get through all of these, but the only thing that gives me hope is that 2 of them I've already gotten halfway through already, and a third, Heartstopper, is a graphic novel, so that won't take too long to read. The recovery takes a lot longer than the reading for Heartstopper in my experience. And we've got a good mix here of different types of books. And so I'm actually feeling pretty good about this list, but I'll keep you posted. We'll see what actually happens because who knows? This may go into May. Happy reading. Let me know if you've read any of these, what you thought of them. Are you participating in the Tomes and Treasures Readathon? I am very much looking forward to this. And so thank you to the Creepy Geek and to Ashley's Bookish Life for creating this readathon. And we'll see just how far we get. Wish me luck. I will see you in the next one.